Hey everybody, this is Curtis with Campfire Tales, Cryptids of America, coming to you tonight with another exciting interview around the campfire with Mr. Rusty Shackelford, aka Mr. Anonymous. Now, before we get started, I do want to remind everybody to check out our merchandise section, and if you see something there you like, please don't be bashful, go ahead and buy it. Also, if you have stories that you would like to share, something you'd like to hear, email me. Okay? A lot of people will post stories on groups that I'm a part of, and then I have to, go through and try to find these folks. So the best thing is, if you want to be interviewed, contact my email, and you'll see it listed in the description down at the bottom. Also, just to remind you guys, this is a family show, so we tried to keep it as PG as possible. I don't have a problem with Mr. Anonymous here doing that, but some others, come on now. Let's see. I guess with no further introductions or anything being necessary, I have no idea what we're going to talk about tonight.
Freeform.
Freeform.
Freeform conversation.
No, kind of like the Joe Rogan show, huh? Yeah, sure. Except less profanity.
So, last time we were talking, we cut it off because it was getting kind of long, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about, sorry. I don't remember exactly. I know we had finished. We talked about Bigfoot and Dogman.
Yeah.
And then we had kind of moved on. We moved on to more paranormal stuff, extraterrestrial kind of things, I think. But I can't remember exactly where we left off. Pete.
Well, we started kind of poking around UFOs and things such as that, and I've done a lot of looking on YouTube and watching different videos and first thing and other, and there's one channel that I've been watching that has an awful lot to do with Dogman.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think Dogman is?
Well, it's not quite a man.
And it's not quite a dog.
It's not quite a dog. There's I was actually listening to some stuff today myself, and there's a few theories out there. One theory is it's like a Bigfoot, but it's a dog, right? Or a canine. Another theory is it's more like a werewolf, like your traditional werewolf. Is a man at some point, and then at other times it's this creature. And then some other people think it's something either extraterrestrial or extra dimensional. Has that component to it where it's not quite from here. I think probably.
So what are they called in Europe? The Vatican? What are they werewolf called in Europe?
So anciently,
yeah,
they had that you see every once in a while you see these elusive texts of tribes of people that were dog-headed men.
Yeah.
They're called cynocephali. That was the name for that. And basically that's there's a few accounts, and I couldn't quote you exactly, but it was even one case where there was these two armies about to go to war, and one of the armies let leak that they had like a squadron of these things, a cynocephali or something, and it was intentional. They didn't have it, but it was enough to convince the other army they didn't want to fool around with this. They just backed out. And so I don't know. There's even supposedly a saint. I can't remember his name. And in the Christian lore, he was a saint, and he's depicted as a dog-headed man.
Yeah, I saw that.
But
Leviathans.
No, Leviathans are biblical. They're the world serpent or whatever.
Okay, well then I'll just be quiet and let you talk.
No, I mean,
get after it.
So, but what I was gonna say is, if you look kind of from a broad spectrum, we're talking about big picture. You can even just look. Let's just focus on the United States, because that's where we're at. All around the world, all around the country, there's always been local stories of these strange hybrid creatures. You have Bigfoot, the Dogmen. You have other cases of things like Goatmen, even like lizard people, and all kinds of variations of these things.
Sure.
And so, I obviously I don't have the answers. Nobody does. But if you have an ape-like creature that can evolve to become bipedal, then certainly you could have the same thing happen with a canine creature. Even if they don't exhibit, even though there's no wolves out there that exhibit like the intelligence of a chimpanzee or something like that. I'm not saying intelligence is necessarily a precursor to there's definitely evolutionary advantages to being able to turn bipedal when you want to. And not all Dogman cases are bipedal, they alternate. The back legs often look like a dog's, like right. What you would see. Yeah. Kind of like in a lot of movies they're depicted in these days.
Right.
And so they can alternate, and obviously the four-legged is probably more for speed, and the two-legged would be more beneficial for seeing things far away. That's kind of why they think humans had early advantages. We could stand up, we could look over the grass, we could look over the bushes, we could see what's around us more clearly than something closer to the ground. And so that's from a prey standpoint. We could avoid things coming after us. But it's also from a predator standpoint, to which, humanity probably benefited from a little bit as well. You could see a herd further away, or you could see your next meal before it sees you, basically. But there's the other theory that I kind of have, and this isn't really one of the three I talked about. And I don't know where I stand on this because I'm kind of all over the place on it, right? There's the Babylonian tablets, and they talk about how they came to Earth, depending on whose interpretation you want to believe, but they came to Earth and they basically just kind of tweaked what was already here to make it suit their needs more. And so you had a creature here that was very strong, and they tweaked its DNA, maybe spliced a little bit of their own in it to give it some intelligence. That way they had a stronger working force to do what they needed to. And so with that in mind, that would mean that really the Sasquatch would probably be like the natural heir to the earth, if we had never come along. And so, we're the outlier here. We're what's not natural. And really, if you look at humanity, even from a biblical perspective, there's nothing natural about us. Everything about us is unusual. Supernatural, yeah.
Okay, but let me ask you this. You're a man of science. I really like science, and I was thinking about this the other night. We talk about evolution, how, supposedly this meteor crashed into the ocean and it had these microorganisms on it, and we evolved from that. Actually it evolved onto something that could crawl on land and eventually grew legs, and that became a monkey. And okay, where is the fossil evidence? I don't know of any.
Of what?
This. Well, there's fossil evidence on meteors. Oh, look at this. It rode this meteor to Earth. I understand that. But where's the fossil records of these things evolving? Because for every stage of life, of existence, evolution even. Now this is going to get pretty deep, because I thought about this a lot the other night. Dinosaurs, right?
Sure.
Okay. Woolly mammoths, right? What are they called? Ammonites? The little creatures that we find in fossil form? The little crab-looking things?
Spiral-shaped things?
Okay, those. What are those things called? Ammonites. Okay. They're not dinosaurs. The ammonites, these little spiral things that look like snail shells, they're not dinosaurs. They're left over from creation. Okay, because you can find these things everywhere, which is evidence that they were alive while the world was covered with seawater. Okay, the woolly mammoths were not. That's a different era, different time. The dinosaurs are in between there somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. So there ought to be, if these microorganisms evolved into life as we know it, as man, even into primates, chimpanzees or gorillas or something, we have fossil evidence of creation. Some people don't want to believe that, but it's true. We have fossil evidence of dinosaurs. We have fossil evidence of woolly mammoths. Where's the fossil evidence of man going through these changes?
So, it's interesting. I mean, we do have fossil evidence of what is commonly believed to be examples of earlier man, right? But we also have lots of fossil evidence of basically what looks like if the genetic line kind of forked. You know, we have evidence of very closely, like Neanderthals, for example. They're not Homo sapiens, right? No. But they're closely related to humans, and we existed at the same time, parallel to one another.
They're different species.
I don't know if it would qualify as different species or not. But what's interesting is it's suggested, and I don't know if it's been proven yet, but they're actually closely related enough that they could interbreed with one another.
Right.
And so that kind of raises some questions, because there's also stories of Sasquatches bearing human children.
True. Meaning
that we would have to be closely related enough, or at least at some point, either the DNA evolved parallel to one another, or there's enough borrowed DNA in there that it's easily transcribed during the reproduction process. But you know, as far as humanity, the case for humanity and the evolution of that, these other fossils that we have, like the Neanderthal fossils and everything like this, is not necessarily evidence of moving from something simpler to something more complex. Neanderthals had bigger brains than we do. They were stronger built. And so but really, if you look, it's like as though we just kind of popped into existence out of nowhere. And you could say that there's not necessarily scientific proof of that or whatever, but if you look at it from a cultural and architectural perspective, because the earliest civilizations we have built some of the most fantastic things, and they just appeared on the scene with knowledge of how to build pyramids and elaborate temples, and they had complex languages, and they had hieroglyphics and written languages like this. They had religions, they had cultures,
mathematics.
And
where does this stuff come from?
You can't build a pyramid. You can't build a pyramid without mathematics.
No.
And these things are so closely aligned to the constellations. It implies even more advanced mathematics, like trigonometry and geometry and things like this, which again doesn't just appear out of nowhere. And so it's interesting, because if you look at like the Book of Enoch, you know, the angels, according to this book, taught early man a whole lot of very advanced concepts that they were not ready for.
Okay, now the angels that you're talking about, these are the fallen angels, the ones who were kicked out of heaven with Satan, who came down and mated with the earthly women, and their offsprings were the Nephilims.
They came down. True. And they mated with earthly women. Now, If you take a woman and you impregnate her with an embryo, to them, it might, it's going to look almost like immaculate conception. You know, we're going to plant this Gen X into this woman. Here's the sperm, and there's going to come out some kind of a hybrid. And so that's kind of another idea. You know, so they came down, and you start seeing these strange hybrids that came out. You know, so like the Dogman, that might not be a natural thing. It might be, hey, let's take some canine DNA, let's implant it with this woman and let her bear a child, and just see kind of if what comes out is useful. And you see this, like, why is there like these weird combinations of things that people see like on the fringes of society, like the goat man. Why would that ever come to be unless someone intentionally, hey, let's take these goats, okay? You know, there's a benefit to having a goat man from a, say like you want to mine, right? First of all, they don't need meat, right? You can just grow lots of vegetables, feed them, and they're gonna work. And also, goats are very agile creatures, so they can access places to mine that they probably never would be able to access as a human, you know? And so a Dogman, like all descriptions of Dogman, these things are just terrifying and huge. You know, they could be used to guard things. They could have just been used for their strength. And so, who is really to say?
Okay, now,
But these are the Nephilim.
if you look at the Book of Genesis, which is where the Nephilim are mentioned, it talks about, you know, how the women, some of them died during childbirth, giving birth to these massive creatures.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then, you know, one theory I heard was that, or read rather, was that when the flood was caused to get rid, excuse me everybody, the flood was caused to get rid of all life on earth. But the book of Genesis tells you that the Nephilim were alive then and they're alive today. Okay? And the reason being that God wanted to destroy all life was because the Nephilim had taught them things which bordered the knowledge they would have gotten had they eaten from the other tree in the garden. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now, if you look at angels, everybody thinks of the little chubby cheeked cherub, you know, with the wings for Valentine's Day and stuff like that. But if you really did a study into angels, you would see that they are massive. They are Herculean in their strength. They
don't all look human.
The majority of them don't look human, and they all have different functions. Mm-hmm. Okay, some are. Well, they look like animals. Okay, yeah. So if the angels who were kicked out of heaven with Satan came down and mated with the women on earth, why wouldn't their offsprings have had these animal-like features as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so there you have Bigfoot, there you have Mothman, there you have Chupacabra, I mean, you have Rougarou, I mean, any kind of booger you can think of out there that has never been substantiated, verified with fossil evidence, but we know that they exist.
You know, what's really troubling about these creatures is there's a trend, and it's not a like an unknown trend. But if you're in the woods, okay, and you're sitting there by yourself, you're going to hear the sounds of nature, right? Mm-hmm. You're going, especially if it's getting dark, you're going to hear the crickets, you're going to hear the birds, hear the squirrels and the chipmunks and everything, right? If a bear comes close, you can watch the bear, and it's going to just move on, hopefully, right? But everything's still, the sound's going to continue. Nature's going to keep doing its thing. But it's a common trend, and a lot of people have pointed this out. They'll especially before a Dogman encounter or a Sasquatch encounter, you're sitting there in the woods, and all of a sudden nature just gets quiet. It's as though nature itself is repulsed by this. It's as though nature itself is afraid of these things because they are unnatural, right? And so that's the people notice this. There's dead silence, and the reason there's dead silence is because these creatures are within the proximity, and that there's no other creature like that to my knowledge that will have that effect on nature wherever it goes. Even humans, for all the noise and racket and stupidity they make as they go through the woods, nature still is pretty indifferent to it.
Pretty
Right?
tolerant of man.
Pretty tolerant. But one of these things come, even the crickets don't want to make a sound. They don't even want its attention.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess, would you call them an abomination?
I don't know.
I don't either.
I don't know.
I don't know what these creatures are, and of course we're just tossing out different theories here because, we were not there when they were created.
But I'll say this. There's a lot of reports, okay? And you may get your channel shut down for this. Probably not. But there's a lot of reports of military contractors and ex-military people who have swore up and down, and they're giving testimonies and stories that the military actively seeks out these things and shoots them down and kills them. They hunt them. They hunt Sasquatch. They hunt Dogmen. If there's a report, they're out there and they kill it. Why? Unless one of two things. Unless they're evil and they don't want the people to know about it, or their existence would, not just their existence, but the genetic evidence they would leave would indicate something, a truth too deep that they, or at least they think is too deep for people to acknowledge. And the thing is, when you see encounters, you'll see sometimes encounters where people have seen a Bigfoot and they'll get a hair sample or something and they'll get it genetically tested, and the results are always the same. Well, it's definitely got traits of an ape, but it's not, and it's definitely got traits of a human,
But it's
but it's not. So, but that's not conclusive, because you could always say, well, who knows where that really came from. But if you actually have the animal there, and it's in a cage, or it's dead, or it's tranquilized or something, and you can pull blood from it, and you can say, look, this thing is definitely human, and it's definitely not. It's definitely a dog, and it's definitely not. And you turn around and tell the public that, people are going to be like, it's going to raise more questions than it's going to raise answers. So it's easier just to go and just
pretend like they don't exist and keep the
just deny and
keep
shoot.
the numbers down.
Deny and shoot, yeah, because the greater the numbers, the greater the encounters.
Now,
Especially with cases like Dogmen.
I know that what I saw, and it's in my first video that I made, was a, well, it wasn't Dogman or anything like that. It was a Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever classification they want to have for it, it was a Bigfoot. And the girl who was the cheerleader, and she and her boyfriend saw the same creature. She actually saw it twice. She said one time it had clothes, like it had taken clothes off somebody's clothesline, and just flung it on, so they could, I don't know, stay warm, look more human. I don't know what the reason was, but
Well, sometimes, this is the first time I've ever heard anything like that, but monkeys, chimpanzees, primates like that, if they see humans a lot,
mm-hmm.
and given the opportunity, they will try to emulate what they're seeing.
Right.
And so if you have something that's relatively well hidden, except for a few incidences, but it can see people go out to the clothesline and like putting clothes on and wearing clothes. It might think, hey,
That's a good idea.
or just like no, that's just a good idea. It's just like a kid, putting on his dad's boots or a girl wearing her mom's makeup. Not necessarily a good idea. It's just I'm seeing them do it and I want to copy it.
Monkey see, monkey do.
Maybe literally.
Yeah. So, all right. So we talked about our thoughts behind these things, and I don't know. We may be close to true. We may not. But there's also you brought up military. There's also stories where I believe it was in Afghanistan, where military actually found some Nephilim.
Yeah, the well, not necessarily Nephilim, but it would definitely fit the description.
The giant cyclops and
The
things
giant
like that.
of Kandahar.
Yeah,
That's the
giant
story.
Kandahar.
That's the story I'm familiar with. And this is almost like your textbook Nephilim. Or giant, biblical giant. Blue skin, multiple rows of teeth, extra fingers and toes. And red hair, and super aggressive. And supposedly there have been. So, according to the story, after this thing was shot, they killed it. I mean, it killed a guy, one or two guys, and they shot it up, just unloaded until this thing finally fell down. And then the military swooped in and carried it off, right?
Right.
And so there's stories that were, even before this happened, where people would find fossil evidence or just skeletons, What's up with this thing? It's way bigger than it should be. Why does it have extra fingers and toes? Why does it have 2 rows of teeth? And then the military comes in and say, "Hey, no, we're gonna destroy this, or we're gonna take it." And they're probably all in a box like Indiana Jones, where the giant warehouse just goes on and on and on.
And that's, I find it very interesting because there are recorded incidences where people have found giant skeletons, giant skulls, and things such as that. And I believe one of the more famous museum institutions took one so that people wouldn't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just rumor.
Academia has a lot of flaws in it.
Sure.
And instead of when something doesn't fit the narrative, instead of let's reevaluate, apply the scientific method and everything that we preach about, instead of applying that and reevaluating their belief system and applying, any of that, it's easier just to hide it.
Well, sure, because if you're a big shot and you've come out and say, "Hey, I believe that we all evolved from monkeys," and then fossil evidence or whatever tends to prove you wrong, well, people are still going to go along with you because they don't want to admit that they were following somebody who was giving bad evidence, bad information.
But there's no fossil evidence we evolved from monkeys.
No.
And really, if anything, like a monkey, or a chimpanzee, or a gorilla, it's just like the Neanderthals we talked about before. They're related, but they're not us.
Right.
Right. And this is just further down the line. There was something else that related that wasn't us, and something else that was related but wasn't us. And it's like the game of telephone. And you get something that looks less and less like a human, still has some genetic similarities, but it's not a human.
I often use the analogy of the canine. We call them all a dog, okay? But how many different species of canine are there?
The question really, okay, so like I've had bloodhounds before. And bloodhounds, their earliest descendants, oh wow, I can't remember, but their descendants that they were bred from don't exist anymore. Right? But my point I'm getting across is if you take a wolf or a coyote or something from the wild, like we did thousands, millions of years ago even, and started selectively breeding them for certain traits. Okay? At what point? Because basically that's what evolution is saying. Like nature selectively chooses traits based off their fitness. Right? And some traits are more suitable, and so nature will just weed out elements. So creatures that have these traits that aren't suitable aren't going to live to reproduce, or they just won't live to the age to have sex or anything. And so, but a bloodhound is still a dog.
Right.
You know, it came a long way from a wolf, but it's still a dog. So at what point, you know, do you breed a bloodhound? What point do you breed traits out that you could safely say this is no longer a dog anymore? And really, what separates species is a few things. You know, first of all, either genetically it just won't work, okay, or physically it just won't work. Like not to go into great detail, but like a pig's penis, for example, shaped like a corkscrew. You know, physically that won't work with something like a chicken. You know, not the,
Now
you know,
remember, we're trying to keep this family friendly.
it is family friendly. I'm just saying physically the puzzle pieces don't match, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing is it might work, but the offspring can't reproduce. Like a donkey and a horse, for example.
Right.
They'll make a mule, which, you know, it's a viable living organism, but it can't reproduce at that point. You
Right.
know, and so there's certain things that really say, hey, this is. But once you cross that threshold, that's what separates species. You know what I mean?
Would you say natural selection?
What about it?
Would you consider it that? Because, you know, at some point, this threshold became where, you know what, you guys, you played your game. Now, you know, natural selection, nature, example, says, too far. We're not going to cross this road.
Yeah. See, I don't know. I don't know the rules of nature.
Well, I don't either.
I just know if you have like an island and you have like a primitive or early version of an anteater, right? And you have two of them. One has a little bit longer snout, or three of them, because you got to be able to reproduce, right? Like two males and a female. And two males have different length snouts, and one can get a little bit of food, but the other one has a much longer snout. He just get in there and get all that food, right? The other one's going to probably die off. It's not going to be able to get as much food. So which one's going to reproduce? The one with the longer snout, right? So the offspring are going to have, and you know, depending on genetics, you know, you got recessive and dominant genes and all kinds of things to look at. But you're going to see some offspring that have longer snouts, and so those are going to be the ones that are successful. Give or take, you know, 1,000 or 1,000,000 years or something, you're going to have a creature that looks very different than the one that was first there. That's basically what evolution is saying. You know, it's nature doing selective breeding over a long period of time.
So either evolving or adapting.
Evolution is adaptation.
Yeah.
It's just evolution really is micro adaptations over the course of millions of years. That's what we're looking at.
Yeah.
So, not really. Not really Bigfoot or Dogmen related, I suppose, but it's
interesting.
It's interesting, and I think it's closely related, because who knows really what the Bigfoot or the Dogman is, but I don't know, to my knowledge, if any Dogman samples have been collected. Most people, you know, you might see somebody sees a Bigfoot and they're willing to follow it and get a hair sample, right? Because you see some. Not me either, but you even see videos of people chasing Bigfoot through the woods, you know, and it's running off, but you don't see videos of people chasing Dogman through the woods. No. You see Dogman, you go the other way, and you're not coming back for a long time.
And it's the same thing with Wendigos.
Yeah.
Wendigos are, you know, supposed to be like, I'm gonna eat you, and they might find evidence of you in my scat.
Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. There's so many things out there. There's so much out there.
Yeah.
And not only do you have these weird things that probably at one point had like this weird blend of human and something else, but who knows how long they've been here? So who knows how long they might have had to change over time? And so, like, the perfect example is the Bigfoot, right? The Sasquatch, because you have lots of different, and this is pretty new information, but you have lots of different types that people see now.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I mean, I guess it's not new information, but you got like these things that look like Patty from like Northwest and stuff, and you got like the Florida skunk ape looking thing, and you have like the Honey Island monster in Louisiana, and these things are all, for all intents and purposes, Bigfoot, but they're also not. They have different behaviors. They have different levels of aggression, and they look slightly different.
Well, the wood booger is what I saw. But, you know, when you go telling people about Bigfoot, they're like, well, I thought you were going to talk about Bigfoot, and you're bringing up this southern thing, a wood bugger. What's a wood bugger? Well, it's a Bigfoot. Yeah, everybody, that's my dog. He a little impatient. He thinks he has stories to tell as well, but he doesn't. So anyhow, you know, I think I'm going to go ahead and call it a day on this one. But next time we get together, Rusty, I mean Mr. Anonymous, I want to do some talking about aliens.
Okay.
Or perhaps ghosts. All right?
Well, yeah, sounds good.
Okay, very good. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and close out on this one. And like I say, our next interview, we're going to talk about aliens or ghosts. And as you can tell,
Goats. I want to talk about goats.
we have some things in common, but I don't know why. But anyhow, guys, if you like what you heard tonight, be sure to hit that like button, share the video with other people. If there's things that you want to talk about, contact me on my email. That is campfiretalesofamerica@gmail.com. Tell me when's the best time to contact you, and I will certainly do my best. Remember, I do have a life outside of YouTube, but
It really doesn't.
yeah. But anyhow, don't forget to check out the merchandise section, and guys, I appreciate it. God bless, and y'all have a great evening. Good night.